crime concerns that surround urban marijuana growing, and that's just that's a reality. It creates many law enforcement difficulties, and we had to make a decision on whether we wanted to go with a primarily dispensary-based system or if we wanted to go with a primarily patient cultivation-based system. And when we made our decision, we were thinking about someone who is a 55-year-old breast cancer patient that is not a marijuana user generally, has maybe never smoked marijuana before in their entire life, but they're having a very difficult time with their chemotherapy treatment, and their oncologist recommends to them that marijuana may be something that they should look into. And we wanted to have a system that effectively serves the needs of those types of patients. I mean, that is the type of individual that this system is designed for. And it's very user-friendly. You can have an individual that has no knowledge of marijuana whatsoever. And the way that we have designed the dispensary system here in Arizona, that patient is going to be able to feel comfortable that they're going to be competently cared for in the same manner that they're cared for when they are using any sort of other legitimate prescription medication. And so, I'm very happy with the way that the system was designed. In the case of very sophisticated current marijuana users who maybe already be using it for their medical purposes, there's going to be some preparation involved for them to be able to transition into the legal market. And that may involve getting a caregiver who lives in a rural area to be able to cultivate for them. That may involve having a relationship with their local dispensary to make sure that they're cultivating the strains that are important to that patient. The conscientious dispensary owners are going to want to develop those relationships with their clients to make sure that they're providing directly to the needs of patients. So, there's going to be some, in order to meet the provisions of the law, for a very limited number, a very few patients, there may be a bit of an inconvenience if they want to be considered legal under the law in order to prepare at the outset. But for 95% of patients, this is by far and away the preferred system for the vast majority of patients.
Now, in California, for the last few years, we've been hearing about the feds going in there and raiding dispensaries, confiscating some of their product, and basically ignoring the California law. Do you expect any kind of difficulties here with the feds? After all, we've already passed a law against illegals, and the federal government's threatening to sue Arizona, or has sued Arizona, to keep us from enforcing it.
Well, this is a different issue than SB 1070, and the reality is in California that ever since the Justice Department in March of 2009 said that they were not going to prosecute medical marijuana offenses any longer, as long as the facilities and the patients and the doctors were in compliance with state law, and they've held true to that pledge. The only facilities that have gotten raided in California and Colorado since that announcement have been facilities that have been breaking the law on the state level. And, a lot of people get legitimately concerned when they see types of raids occur, and they see federal agents assisting local law enforcement to raid a marijuana facility. But that's because those facilities were not playing by the rules entirely. And in all of those cases, those were raids that were led by local law enforcement that asked for federal assistance in order to carry out the raid. So that was not, in those cases, the DEA going in and raiding the facilities. That was local law enforcement asking for assistance from the feds in order to do that.
And what were these shops doing wrong? Selling them to somebody without a prescription?
Well, there's very specific guidelines in California now that you need to keep on file. The documentation for the patients that you have, and that needs to relate to the number of that you're cultivating. That's the system that they have. And many facilities aren't doing that in the way that they're supposed to. And another issue that has led to some raids over there is that they are not, their bookkeeping what they're reporting to the government that they're making on income does not correlate with the amount of product that they've been observed to be cultivating and distributing. So they're not reporting their activity appropriately to the. I mean, in a regulated environment, that's important. I mean, when you're distributing a controlled substance, and this is true for pharmacies that distribute other controlled substances like narcotic painkillers. I mean, you need to be able to account for your product. And if you can't do that, then you're going to run into some problems. And that's what's happening with most of those facilities. Now, I mean, this is not to say that there hasn't been issues with DEA intimidation in the past. I mean, there certainly has been. And there's a lot of room for improvement in the way that the Drug Enforcement Administration treats medical marijuana programs. That's for certain. But as far as the Department of Justice is concerned, and their pledge on not to prosecute these cases, they've held true to that pledge. They've been true to their word, which is nice.
So you don't foresee any problems from the feds here?
Not if the regulations are written the way that they can be. I think that there's a 4-month period of time after the results of the election are certified, where the Arizona Department of Health Services has 120 days to develop their rulemaking process, which is basically to enact the regulatory authority that we grant them under the initiative, to be able to basically have the nuts and bolts regulations for these dispensaries. And if those regulations are put into place in a way that is very transparent, so that the state can see the way these facilities are operating, and those facilities that are licensed follow the rules to the letter, I think that we are going to be in a situation where it's going to be very easy for facilities to demonstrate that they are operating fully in accordance with the law, which is going to inoculate them with the federal government, who has already pledged that they will not prosecute individuals who are operating in full accordance with the law. So, there's an opportunity for a partnership between state government and these facilities. If you have, if the state, and they seem to be willing to do so. I mean, they want to have an open and public process when they're developing these regulations. And I think if they take the right type of input from the right type of individuals who have the expertise to draft these types of regulations, and they're drafted thoughtfully, and with the idea of making it easy to comply with the rules while still having them be strict enough that we're eliminating, most of the possibility for abuse. I think that is the best environment. I mean, the right types of operators are going to want to be able to demonstrate they're following the law. And if they're easily able to do that, then they're going to significantly reduce their exposure to the federal government.
What do you see in the future for the United States as a whole? Are we going to just have states that are going to be hardcore and continue to put people in jail for marijuana, even minor possession? Are they going to continue doing that, or do you see this medical marijuana being a turning point into canceling? I mean, we're suffering from prohibition right now, and we've got a tremendous amount of people incarcerated.
Yeah, there are many marijuana arrests every year, and we want to make sure that included in that group are not legitimate patients. And I think, as far as medical marijuana goes federally, I think that fairly soon you're going to see a rescheduling of marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. The political pressure is building for that. The American Medical Association came out earlier this year it was earlier this year, to endorse the idea of having additional research on marijuana and rescheduling it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, which would, after an FDA approval process, allow marijuana to be legally prescribed by physicians. I think that the important thing to look for in that process is that do they actually give FDA approval to organic, grown in the ground marijuana, or do they try to wait to give FDA approval until the pharmaceutical industry is able to develop something that they can patent and therefore profit from? I think we need to fight very hard to try to get organic marijuana FDA approved for medical use.